Hello and welcome to part 2 of my questions. This is the Staying in My Lane podcast, and we are back for a round 2 Q&A. And I am solo again because I am currently working on recording with some guests that are going to be coming on the podcast. So last week I answered questions that I have gotten since I started my podcast, and today I'm going to continue that. And these are a little bit more personal, so I saved some of these until this episode. It's more directed at me and who I am, and maybe you guys can get to know me a little bit better. So let's get started. Who are you when no one is around? Ooh, okay. I'm quiet. I watch murder mysteries, crime documentaries, listen to podcasts. I like comfort shows. Anything that makes me laugh or anything that can get my mind moving. I love crime. I love thriller. I love drama. I love comedy. But who am I? Who am I really, really when no one is around? You know, I like to work on self-growth. So if I'm not listening to a podcast about self-growth, then I'm trying to do meditation and I'm trying to take care of my house and my kids and my husband, and I'm usually just working on something. I like to stay busy. I think that's a trauma response. So yeah, I mean, I'm a pretty quiet person for the most part, unless I'm super, super comfortable with you. And then you get to be a little bit more in the know with my funny side. And I'm more apt to be more comfortable around you. So I would probably be able to open up a little bit more. What part of yourself are you still trying to understand? Ooh, ouch. That kind of like, ooh, that's a little bit triggering of a question, but I think I'm trying to understand the part of me that has been so angry and angry over a lot of different things and almost a little bit resentful of things. I'm trying to understand who she is and why she feels that way. And that's where a lot of my growth comes in, my deep work in myself. What's something about you that you rarely share but wish someone would ask about? Well, anybody who knows me knows that I don't like any attention on me and I feel very awkward. I'm a huge introvert, so I don't want anybody to ask me anything in public. Like, I'm cool doing podcast episodes, but if you're going to ask me in front of a group setting, absolutely not. One thing I really wish is that people would understand and have more empathy and less judgment in situations like this. I have been through a lot in my life and I have a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge, and I wish people would stop thinking that I'm so conceited and I think I know everything, because number one, I don't know everything. I just have a lot of experience with things, and I think that that's a gift that I've been able to have, to where I've been able to help other people. And I'm not conceited and I'm not rude or dramatic. I'm just very honest. And I think people, again, are very uncomfortable with honesty and truth. So I think that me having a very honest and like very just genuine personality can be off-putting. And I think people who aren't comfortable or healed with themselves may find that dramatic and fake. How do you define your worth? Well, I have established boundaries with myself. I've established guidelines, and I've really became like a pro at making vision boards for myself and being able to grow through every season of life. I define my worth by knowing that I deserve to feel safe and secure, and that I've worked really hard to get to this place of growth and healing and peace, and that anything that comes in contact with me that jeopardizes that is not worth any time in my life. So that kind of goes along with knowing my worth, knowing my boundaries, and knowing my peace. Have you ever truly had your heart broken? Oh yeah, numerous times. Through relationships. Probably the biggest heartbreak I've ever had was realizing that a person that I was married to had the capacity to hurt children, especially children that were biologically given to him by God and entrusted with by God. That broke my heart probably more than anything in this entire world. And my heart still is shattered from that. So yeah, Not with relationships so much, but that kind of grief and that kind of heartbreak is something that's unexplainable. What's a relationship you still think about years later? Well, I don't think about it in terms of love or like missing somebody, but I think about my first marriage and I'm angry about it still. That goes along with my growth and parts of me that I'm trying to still understand. I think about it because I go back and I try to analyze moments that maybe I could have saved something or maybe I could have stopped something, and I just get really angry. So it's not really like a loss thing, it's more of just the fact that I'm trying to make sense of things. Have you ever loved someone who didn't love you back? I want to say yes, but no, I have not. I have had a couple serious relationships and that's it. But I would say I don't think that my first marriage was truly capable of being actual love. I think it was gaslighting and narcissism and manipulation. And I think I truly loved and gave everything I had, but I don't think it was reciprocated. So maybe, yeah, maybe. How do you know when it's time to let something go or someone go? I think when you reach that point where your gut is telling you to let go or your gut is telling you that something is wrong, trusting your intuition and, when it no longer serves you. I think that can go with a person or anything else, is when something no longer serves you or brings you peace, I think it's time to let it go. You guys, these questions just get so deep. What's a wound that you're still healing from? Watching my children's heartbreak and not being able to fix it. That would definitely be a wound I'm still healing from. I don't know if I'm ever going to heal from it, but I'm trying. I'm trying really hard. What's something that you've forgiven yourself for? It may not have even been my fault, but not being able to protect my children when they most needed me. That's a hard one because there's multiple people who are involved in that harm, and knowing that things were happening. And so I've forgiven myself for not being able to be there when they needed me, but I know that they're safe now and I'm here now. Even if it's not really my fault, technically, I just felt really angry at myself for a really long time for that. What's a painful experience that unexpectedly changed you for the better? Going through struggles in my marriage, it's really opened my eyes up to healing and me looking at myself from an outside view, knowing that I need to work on certain characteristics in my personality, in myself, heal from certain things, change the way I react. Going through a dark season of not knowing if my marriage was going to make it unexpectedly forced me to heal and look at myself, and that made things better. What do you do when you feel emotionally unsafe? Um, you know, the first thing I do is probably kind of shut down a little bit. Um, or sometimes I'll snap back. It just kind of depends on my mood or what situation I'm in. But the biggest thing is I just try to look at what's going on with the situation. And normally I will do something in a trauma response. So I will clean, I will shower, I will work out, which I can't right now because I'm pregnant with the twins and I'm a high risk pregnancy. So I can't really do anything right like that right now. But I try to just kind of avoid the situation. And I know that's not always healthy, but I step back and I try to kind of analyze things. And I'm working really hard at trying to not react. And instead of reactivity, I try to take that pause and think about things before I say something that I'm going to regret. What do you believe in when everything falls apart? Well, besides my faith, karma. I think that what happens in the dark always comes to light. And I think that it's just a matter of time. Things happen and the truth comes out. So you can't really hide things forever. And I think that is really important. Do you think everything happens for a reason? Yes and no. I think that we have the ability to choose right from wrong, up from down, left to right, whatever you want to think about. I think that we choose things and we have consequences for those things. I don't think it all happens for a reason, again, because we can choose to do what's right or we can choose to do what's wrong. But I think there's a season and a reason for a season. I think that we are put into certain situations so that we can later have the ability to share and heal from that. And I think there's a reason that we are put into situations that we are put into, although I don't think that life is fair all the time. And I don't think that it's always something that we understand, but I think that we can make something good out of it when we change our mindset. What's something that you're ashamed to admit? That I've been a toxic person. I mean, I've worked really hard on not being that. I've worked hard at changing that. But the fact that I've been a very toxic person and I've been very angry and aggressive, I guess, in certain situations. And it's taken me a long time to get rid of that pain and anger that I have been holding on for so long, and that it comes out in certain situations, I guess. But I've worked really hard on trying to change that. When did you feel the most misunderstood? I mean, I've always kind of felt misunderstood. I think because I do have such a honest personality and I'm pretty much comfortable with the truth, that I think people take that and they can twist that and make that to be something negative or kind of twist it to make me be misunderstood. So I mean, there's not really a certain time frame, but I feel like I've just kind of always been misunderstood unless people actually get to know me for who I truly am and can embrace that and accept that, which I don't let a lot of people in my circle. So I feel like if you are in my circle, congratulations. What are you afraid people would think if they knew the full truth about who you are? Well, I don't really have anything to hide. I think people would just be shocked at what I've been through and what I've seen and been exposed to. I mean, I've had a lot of different experiences in my life that have shaped me for who I am. I think people would be more concerned and more shocked about what certain people in my life have done and what I've been able to hide for so long, if that makes sense. What's something from your childhood that you're still trying to unpack? I mean, a lot. I think that there were certain things in my childhood that happened that I tried to suppress and I didn't tell my mom and dad about. And I don't really know why I didn't tell them. I think it was maybe to protect them because I wanted to keep my family together. And there were certain family members, extended family members, who caused me a lot of pain, and I was scared. So, I mean, I'm still trying to unpack that, and that's part of my healing journey. That's part of the reason why I don't speak to that family. And, this kind of goes into the next question. What did you need as a child that you didn't receive? Yeah, I needed unconditional love. I needed safety. Pretty much safety. I didn't feel safe in certain situations, not from my mom and dad, but from extended family. Sorry, extended family who were entrusted to keep me safe and love me. And that again goes along with just because they're family doesn't mean that they can hurt you and get away with it, which I don't really feel like my family's gotten away with it. I think they know exactly what they did, but I think they don't want their image to be ruined. How has your role in your family affected who you've become? So I often talk about the fact that I'm the scapegoat and the black sheep of my family. And so for me, I've tried to make sure that none of my children feel that way in our family. I don't want any different roles to be assigned to the kids. I want them to grow up in a healthy home without dysfunction and knowing their worth. What's one dream that you've given up on? I don't think I've given up on any dreams. I think I've just changed my timeline, to be honest. Who do you still need to forgive? Myself. Does that count? No, myself and somebody who has hurt my children. I think those are the two things that I need to work on. But again, it's really hard because there's a lot of anger and unanswered questions. And for people who really, truly, truly know me, they know that I search for answers because I don't like to not know the answer to something. So I think with all in time, it will happen. What's the hardest truth that you've ever had to accept? Ooh, that's a good one. That not everybody is a good person. I think that we grow up thinking that everybody's good and people will say sorry when they hurt you and people will love you and people will treat you good, but the majority of people are not good people. And I hate saying that because I like to be positive, but it's rare to find people who have integrity and unconditional love and acceptance. It's rare to find people who can admit when they're wrong and truly take that accountability to become a good person. So, accepting that not everybody is a good person and not everybody wants to change. When do you feel the most emotionally connected to someone? So it actually takes me a really long time to feel emotionally connected to someone. I have been burned so many times and I can see right through people's bullshit. So for me, because I can read people's energy and my intuition is so strong, I'm very careful at putting my emotional vulnerability out there. So, in time, I am able to build a relationship with someone, but I'm only emotionally connected to a couple people deeply that I can think of. But I need trust and honesty and loyalty, and I need someone to have strong integrity. I have a lot of friends and, peers, but being emotionally connected, the person has to have integrity and they have to be completely honest and genuine. Have you ever been forgiven when you didn't deserve it? Probably. I really can't think of any certain time, probably when I was younger. And in thinking about my current relationship, I've said and done things that are not very nice. And so, in hindsight, yeah, it's probably forgiveness, but did I deserve it? Maybe not necessarily. But I've worked really hard to become a better person. So I can fully and openly admit that. What would your younger self be proud of and disappointed by? Well, I think my younger self would be really proud of all the things that I've had to go through and where I've kind of landed, I guess. I think she would be disappointed by the way that I've taken it out on people closest to me and reacted in certain situations. Okay, moving on. What do you want to be remembered for? I want to be remembered for my honesty, my integrity, because that's something that I hold really dear to my soul. I think that out of everything, that's the most important for me. When I say I'm going to do something, when I say that I'm going to keep a secret, when I say that I'm loyal, whatever it may be, I want people to know that they can believe me, they can trust me. I'm really good at keeping my word. That's something that I have always been good at because I know what it's like to feel burned. I know what it's like to feel, betrayed. And the last thing that I would want to do is make anybody feel that way. But I'm also somebody that is very honest in situations where things may not be full of integrity or the right reasons, and maybe things may be, twisted or covered up to make things look good. I'm not going to be that team player. I'm going to be the one that does the right thing even when no one is watching. I'm going to be the one that calls it out and calls bullshit on things when it's not being ethically, morally, or legally done the correct way. What lesson do you hope to pass down to other people? I think this whole podcast, I've been able to talk about things that are considered taboo or uncomfortable in our society and trying to normalize these conversations and, pass down the importance of being a good person and having integrity and, doing the right thing and facing the truth, because that's a really hard thing to do. And I think it's becoming more difficult in 2025 because it's easy, to cover things up. It's easy to lie. But once you start that lying, it's kind of like you just have to dig a deeper hole. You have to cover your lies up, and that's how things get twisted. When you speak the truth can't be misconstrued. The truth can't be, going on this path off to the left. You're on a straight and narrow path with the truth, and with lies, it kind of becomes a curving, windy road where you have to keep up with everything. And that's just, to me, it's not worth it. And it's also not right. So I think ultimately just the importance of being truthful and living in integrity is probably the most important thing that you can do for yourself and others. When did you feel like you were living with real purpose? I mean, I feel like I live with real purpose every day. I have a career that I love. I've switched job roles and I'm now in a job that I absolutely love and it brings me full purpose. And, I left my other job in a way that I didn't really want to leave, but I left because, again, I have integrity and that's not something I'm going to get into. But I can say for a fact that I left knowing that I had integrity and honesty and good intention behind it. And that's more than what other people can say. So ultimately, I do feel like I live with real purpose every day. I love my children. I love my husband. I love myself. I love the life that we've built. And I love the fact that I'm growing every day and learning every day. So I think that's the whole point of living with purpose. What does a meaningful life look like to you? Again, I think it's with purpose. You have to find what means something to you and what you have to find your purpose and what you want in life. And whatever that may be is when you feel at peace, when you feel happy, when you can look back on things and say that you're content and you feel genuinely happy, I think that is meaningful. And I think that's what life is about, is finding what works for you. Oh, you guys, this question right here. What's the biggest secret that you've kept and why? Why would I tell you if it's a big secret? I'm not going to tell you. Have you ever felt pressure to be someone that you're not? Of course. I think that, in certain situations, whether it's professional or personal, when people try to force you to act a certain way or keep a secret or go along with something that is wrong, that's pressure to feel like someone that you're not. And for me, someone who's really honest and genuine, that's hard for me to do. I don't want to be part of those situations. And that's why I've left certain jobs. That's why I've left certain social circles. I don't want to be pressured to feel like someone that I'm not. I don't want to feel someone who's inauthentic or not genuine. I want to live in my truth and I want to live honestly. And so if I don't feel that, then I'm not going to be around that. What loss has changed you the most? I've lost a lot of friends in my life, and that's something I've not talked about a lot on here. I've just experienced a lot of loss from the time I was a teenager. And so, that changes you. You learn to see death really early. You learn that life isn't fair. You learn that the world is evil and that there are people out there who are not very nice. And it's, I'm getting emotional. It's hard, people make choices and God gave us the free will of choice, and some people don't make the best choices, and that unfortunately costs people their lives, and that's hard. So yeah, I've had to learn really young what loss feels like, and I don't think there's any one specific loss, but it's been really hard. What's something or someone that you had to let go of even when it hurt? There's a lot of people in my life that I've let go of. I've ended friendships. Some I've lost to death again. I think that it's taught me the value of life and how important and how short it truly is. It's not worth it to be argumentative. It's not worth it to be negative. It's not worth it to be a sketchy person that does things that are full of, not good intentions. So whether it's a friendship that's, ended because I've ended it, or, we've ended it or whatever, or it's a friendship, or a relationship that the person has passed, there's a lot of different people I can think of. And it's been hard because in certain situations where they have not passed, ending a friendship, ending a relationship, because that it has to end is not easy. And trying to answer those questions that, you may not have answers to can be really difficult, again, because I love to have answers to everything. But, I've had to let go of a lot of situations. I had to let go of my first marriage because it wasn't healthy. I've had to let go of people who've left this earth too quickly. And it's crushed my soul. And yeah, it's been really hard overall. Have you ever felt guilty for choosing yourself over something else? Yeah. I think that's a normal human emotion, but I also think that choosing yourself over, negativity comes with a lot of different emotions, but it's ultimately worth the peace to have that. How do you process grief emotionally, spiritually, or practically? I process it in a lot of ways. How I processed grief when I was 13, 15, years old versus now is different. I think accepting reality, accepting what is, stop looking for answers when there isn't really any answers is hard, but also, grounding, praying, meditating, looking towards, a higher power. I've, searched for answers a lot of the time, but just accepting what is and not knowing that you're not going to be able to change the outcome, but enjoying and loving the time that you had with whoever it is and moving on is kind of the best way to go about it, I think. What does anxiety feel like in your body? That's a good question. For me, I get really itchy, and I used to have an autoimmune disorder. I don't really think I have it anymore, but I used to get rashes when I was anxious, and that has kind of went away the more that I've healed my body and my mind. But I feel it all over my body. I get really shaky, or if my body kind of just goes like really quiet and like almost numb, those are the two ways that I can tell. What moment in your life split you into a before and after? Um, Going through the termination of my ex-husband, and his parental rights. Um, there was an innocence that was taken not only from my children, but from me as a mom and a person. There's a before that and after that, and I don't really like to get into it too much, but I'm very different from before versus after. I think that my mind, my body, my mental and physical and emotional states were all altered so intensely that I have changed the way I look at life. I'm very aware and hypervigilant, as I said in the first Q&A episode. And I think that there's a sense of feeling betrayed and feeling angry at certain things and questioning things and wanting to be an advocate, wanting to change things that I have not felt before. There's a lot of things in this world that happen that are not good, right? And now it's easier for me to tune into those news stories or those sob stories or those trauma stories, the recovery stories. Those are more like appealing to me now, having went through such a traumatic situation and wanting to change and wanting to advocate for that change. I feel it more deeply and I feel much more strongly about it than I did before. What's a risk you took that changed everything? I mean, I've taken a lot of risks in my life, but I think moving to a new city where I didn't know anybody and starting completely over was one of the biggest risks that changed. Who said something to you, positive or negative, that you've never forgotten? There was one thing that was said to me during my divorce that was never forgotten, and unfortunately, he held true to that promise. He said, I will make your life hell and I will make sure you don't forget me. And that has stuck with me for years. Again, on the positive side, though, there was one comment that was made to me from a friend who passed. And she said, no matter what you do, don't give up on yourself. And ironically, that was the statement that kept me going during the whole promise to make my life hell. So it's kind of a little sunshine in the rain, a little bit of a rainbow in the rain. So yeah. What's a memory that you return to when you need strength? There's a memory that I love. It's a recurring, situation, but whenever I was stressed and I lived down in the Des Moines area, I would go on the trails, and there was a certain trail that I love, and it just brought me a lot of peace. So when I'm feeling really stressed or when I'm, feeling really down, I picture that trail and I just picture running on that trail, and all the positive memories and the conversations that came with that bring me a lot of peace and a lot of strength because they were deep conversations in a time where I needed strength. What's something you've learned the hard way about love? Love is not enough. You have to have a lot more than love. You have to have forgiveness. You have to have strength. You have to have understanding and truth and honesty. And you have to have all of those things in order to have love. Have you ever had to reinvent yourself, and what triggered it? I mean, I feel like we're always changing and reinventing ourselves. I think that we're always trying to grow. So, I think there's certain situations like the traumas that we went through or the experiences that we went through that have forced us to grow as people. For me, just going through the hard things and learning that, life is not easy and, things are not easy, and having to accommodate myself to grow through those situations, I think would be the best thing. I think, you know, having that change and feeling that shift is kind of what, keeps me going. And I feel like I'm always trying to find ways to become a better person and become a better, human in general. But in certain situations, it just depends on if I'm, in the situation of wanting to improve as a wife or improve as a mother or a social worker or whoever. I'm going to find ways to make that better. What would you say to someone who hurt you if they were willing to listen? I would just say, I hope that you find peace, and I'm not going to force you to admit that you hurt me. I'm not going to force an apology, but I hope that someday you can reflect and find the peace that I have found without that apology, without that acknowledgement. And I hope that you grow. And that's the beauty of life, is that we have the opportunity to wake up every day and choose peace and growth instead of resentment and avoiding the situation. Okay, let's get ready to wrap up the serious questions and move on to some funner ones. What's something that you've survived that no one knows the full story of? Just certain situations in my life. I think that there's two situations I can think of off the top of my head. One where I witnessed something horrific and it changed my life forever. And what I witnessed and what I went through in my relationship in my first marriage. Nobody knows the full story. There was a lot that happened behind closed doors that I kept quiet, that I was scared to talk about. And although there are two sides to every story, and then they say that there's two sides and the truth, in my situation, there was a lot of dark, and I was in a really dark place. But nobody really knows what happened in those moments except me and that person that was in the room. And unfortunately, he chose anger and alcohol and abuse over everything else. And it was the time where I wanted to really give up and I wanted to just run and hide, but I chose to face it head on. And now I have my kids and now they're safe and we got through it. So, yeah. Okay, I lied. There's a couple more questions. What does strength mean to you now versus what it meant to you years ago? Before I thought that strength was just kind of getting through it and moving on. Now I look at strength as acknowledging the pain and finding a way to grow through it instead of going around it, and using that to change the world, whether it's a small change or a big change. Taking what we've been through and learning to help other people and learning to talk about it instead of suppress it is true strength. If you could go back in one moment and choose differently, would you? Although I would love to say yes, I think that the way that I've chosen things now has shaped me to the person I am today. And although there's obviously things I wish I could take back or do differently, I wouldn't change anything because ultimately it's brought me to this moment. If someone knew the whole truth about you, what would they see differently? Again, I think it goes back to them. They would be able to see that I'm a genuine, authentic person. They would be able to see that I'm an honest person, that what I do when I'm by myself, what I say when I'm by myself, how I act when I'm by myself is the same on how I act when I'm around other people, and that I truly want to be a good person, and that I've been hurt in my life and I would never want anybody else to feel that way. So, that's just kind of the whole thing is people who know me and truly know me, I hope that they know that. But if people truly knew everything that I've been through and every experience that I've had, I think that they would look at me in a different light. Have you ever worn a mask to protect yourself emotionally? I don't know if I've worn a mask per se, but I've definitely built walls and put up boundaries to make myself protected. And it's not necessarily what I wanted to do, but I felt the need to do in order to, not hurt myself or not let myself be hurt, I guess would be a better wording of it, because I felt like I couldn't trust certain people, or I was, uncomfortable discussing certain things at certain times. And again, I think it goes back to being really intuitive. I'm really able to read energy on people. And so knowing, who I need to kind of put an emotional boundary up with would be probably more appropriate, I guess, to word it as. Okay, so now that we've done the serious, deep, personal questions, let's move on to some ones that are more lighthearted and fun. If you could live in the universe of any show, but you don't get to be the main character, which show are you picking and who? Like a TV show? Probably Heart of Dixie. It's one of my comfort shows, and although I would not want to be Zoe Hart, I would probably want to be Lemon. What's a show that you love that you don't admit to people? I watch the world's like ugliest houses, anything realty, I guess. Um, the weirdest houses, the scariest houses, things like that. I can binge those in like a day. And sometimes it's just when I'm bored, I'll watch things like that. What's a conspiracy theory that you 100% believe in? Oh gosh, a lot of them. I go down rabbit holes all the time on TikTok and Instagram, reels that are on Facebook. I don't have Instagram, but I go down all these different rabbit holes, and I've watched different parts to different series of different conspiracy theories. I think aliens are real. I think that it's impossible for us to be the only species living in the entire area, of this entire galaxy and even in the world. I think reptilians are real. I can't get into the good ones on here because I don't really want to. I'm such a conspiracy theorist that I feel like somebody would come after me for saying and talking about like the weird ones or like the dark ones. But a lot of my conspiracy theories are more lighthearted and weird than they are dark. So I don't know. It just kind of depends on what conspiracy theory we're talking about. What's one of the weirdest habits that you have, or one of the most odd habits that you have that you don't talk about? I'm really OCD. So I have to do things either like in a certain order or have them done a certain way for me to be able to relax and unwind. So I don't want to say a control freak, but I'm definitely OCD. If you could give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be? Um, you know, to maybe make some better choices, hang out with some better people. Uh, don't get caught up in trying to be part of a group, and maybe just more focus on being successful and saving money rather than feeling like you need to blow it. What's one of the craziest things that you've done? And also, what is one of the scariest situations that you've been in? Oh gosh. Well, when I was younger, I partied a little bit in college, and I was in a really freaky dark house, and I remember the cops raiding it and me having to find a place to hide, and the only place I could find was a car wash. And I ended up sitting in there for a while, and the doors wouldn't move. So I thought I was trapped in there, and it was kind of like a Final Destination thing, and it was really creepy. So that would be the scary one. And then the craziest one, I think, would be anytime that I TP'd or went out with my friends in high school. One time we were running through a cornfield and I fell into a hole, and my friends had to come and find me, and it was really scary because it was like 2 a.m. and we had just TP'd to school. And so being stuck in a hole was kind of also scary, but it was also really crazy because we just had a lot of fun. And those were some really good memories of growing up in a small community rather than like a city or a town where there's just a lot of like, regulations on don't do this and don't do this, or you can only do this if you're a certain person or a teacher, whatever, teacher's kid, or whatever. So we all just had a lot of fun, and we all did a lot of dumb fun things. But yeah, I think just doing those type of things, having those experiences in high school, um, had given me a lot of good memories. What's a what if scenario that you daydream about just for fun? Winning the lottery, of course. I have a plan of what I would do if I won the lottery. And so I've been, you know, if it happens, it happens. I'm not daily manifesting it, but it would just be fun to win if that was a thing. What's a TV conspiracy theory or plot twist that hit too close to your real life? So I don't necessarily think it's too close to my real life, but one that hit close to like a whoa situation was the Sons of Anarchy ending. I was like not prepared for that at all. So I think that, I mean, obviously I have no connection to a life like that, but having seen that, I was just like, what the heck? Like, did we have to end it that way? And that's a show that I've grieved because I love that show. I love the series. I've watched it and rewatched it a couple times. So I don't know. That's a show that I'm like, dang it, we should have had a different ending or it should have went on, but I get why he made the decisions that he did. What was your favorite TV show as a kid? Saved by the Bell and Boy Meets World. I used to watch every single morning when I was getting ready for school. Without a doubt, hands down, that was my favorite. I would kind of bounce back and forth between the two. If you could create a TV show out of your life, what kind of series would it be and what would happen? I mean, kind of like a drama thriller. I mean, look at my life and what I've been through. I think I would definitely have a little bit of a up and down drama. So yeah, drama. Have you ever saved an animal and why and what happened? That's an interesting question. I think I know who asked this question. Yes, I saved a pet turkey. Well, it wasn't a pet turkey, it was a wild turkey. And we saved the eggs and put it under a lamp, and it hatched and it thought I was its mom. And I ended up raising it and taking it to school, taking it through the Burger King drive through and keeping it in my room in a Rubbermaid tub until it was big enough and I had to let it go. What's the hardest part about being a parent and why? Just watching your kids make mistakes, watching them hurt, and not being able to fix it, I think is really hard because you want to fix it, but you also want them to learn independently. And sometimes I have to remind myself that I need to take a step back. I know that you're pregnant now. What were some baby names that you really liked when you were younger that you would never consider now? Oh my gosh. I used to make up names all the time because I used to write books when I was little. So when I was like in fourth and fifth grade, I started writing little books that were like 10 pages long, written out stories. So names that I had in there were like Daisy, Rosie, Saren, really just weird names that I probably would not choose for my own children. Fun fact, the names that I chose for my kids, I never even thought about when I was younger. So these were all names that I found later in life when I was thinking of names for my babies when I was pregnant with each one of them. I really didn't have any names picked out prior to that because they've always kind of changed and evolved based on if I ended up finding someone who had that name, I would not want to use it with my child. Do you have names picked out for the twins and are you going to share them? Yeah, I mean, we have names picked out left and right, up and down. No, I'm just kidding. We do have names picked out, but we are not going to share them with anyone. What's one rule that you swore you'd never break as a parent and then broke immediately? Co-sleeping. I was like, I'm never going to let my kids sleep in my bed. Okay, well, that's a lie and it lasted like one day. So tell me your favorite music and your favorite bands. Okay. Well, when I was younger, I was really into 50 Cent and, like G Unit, all of that. But as I've gotten older, I love heavy metal. I love the 80s rock. Anything Slipknot, Ghost, Trivium, Ozzy Osbourne, anything like that, Marilyn Manson. I know that those are all kind of controversial because people think that people who listen to heavy metal are like insane, which I mean, they're not wrong, but it brings me a sense of peace. Like I can de stress and unwind listening to heavy metal or rock. I used to like country. I don't anymore. I like the older country. I'm fine with listening to that occasionally, but I'm not a big fan of anything but heavy metal, and I really like podcasts. I don't listen to music a lot, but when I do, it has to be something that like brings me like a peaceful vibe, or like a sense of like just chill. Speaking of, what is your favorite song? Oh, I don't have a favorite song. I mean, I really don't. It just depends on my mood. But I like anything that can get me in a mood, depending on what mood I need to be in, whether it's like hyped up or just kind of unwinding and relaxing, or maybe I'm kind of raging because I'm angry or I'm stressed. Honestly, it just kind of depends. What's a favorite that you used to be obsessed with that you're kind of embarrassed about now being an adult? Um, I used to play Harriet the Spy, and I would reenact, quote, spying on people. And looking back on it, it's a little cringy. Have you ever realized that one of your favorite things, whether it's a habit or something else, has actually helped shape who you are today? Yeah, I think my love for cooking, my love for food, and trying new things has helped shape my, hobby, my little favorite thing that I do, because I'm always looking for ways to try new food, try new recipes, make cool little meals for the kids or things like that. However, this summer, since being pregnant, my kids have lived on pizza and, chicken nuggets and fries that I make at home. Because I've been so sick that any sort of meat makes me nauseous. So I can't really cook my favorite things right now. What's something that you love that makes zero sense to anyone else, but you're fine with it making zero sense to anyone else? Or something that somebody would not understand? Um, I love crime documentaries or like thriller movies, suspense movies, and I love to watch those when I'm stressed out, because it brings me like a kind of makes my mind shift focus, and it brings me sort of like an interest that distracts me from what's actually going on in my own life. What's your secret go to I'm too tired for this parenting hack that you can give to us? Probably when I turn on a movie and tell the kids that we're having movie night, and I get some pizza or some, like we do pasta or popcorn, and we just do a movie night, chill movie night, where we put the couches together or we make a tent or a fort and we watch movies. That way I can kind of unwind or, you know, take a nap while they're watching a movie, and I don't have to feel guilty about it. But honestly, they're getting to the age now that it's not really a problem. They usually, go to bed or they'll do their own thing if I need a break. But obviously, that's going to be changing with two babies on the way. So I'll probably be starting that movie night thing again eventually. Okay, so somehow I missed one of these questions last time, and I thought this would be a perfect way to end the episode today. What is one deep piece of advice meant for reflection and meant for growth that you could give to anyone who's going through it or anyone who is trying to get out of the trenches? I don't know who wrote that, but that's a good question. I did put all of these into like two different categories when I like kind of combined and meshed these questions into my folder. But I think probably the most important advice that I could give to someone who's going through it is, don't confuse your peace with silence. I think it can be really easy to mistake the absence of noise and conflict or emotion for peace within yourself, especially when life is like really overwhelming or you're stressed or you really don't know how to handle things. But real peace is not just about being quiet, it's about feeling safe to be yourself, safe to sit with the silence, safe to be you in any situation, messy thoughts, big feelings, and all, without shrinking yourself to keep the world comfortable. And that's kind of the whole point of my podcast too, is speaking the truth, whether it's comfortable or not. Sometimes the peace comes with hard conversations, ugly truths, or choosing yourself in rooms that never saw you clearly. Let that silence be a tool, not a mask. And, we deserve the kind of peace that lets us breathe out, not just shut down or not be forced to shut down. So that would be my best piece of advice. And with that being said, I'm going to end this episode of part 2. And just for future reference, I am bringing a guest on next time. So stay tuned for that. As always, thank you for listening. And you can find this podcast, Apple, Amazon, Spotify, etc., 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 and pretty much anywhere you can find the podcast. Look for Staying in My Lane podcast and share with all your friends. Thank you for asking me all these questions. I've been holding on to them for a while. They're coming from all over. I have listeners from everywhere, which is kind of cool to look at. So with that being said, thank you, and I will see you later.